Ladies and gentlemen, it is Monday night. It is time for Two Tire Change with Big Rich Richardson. And man, I'm telling you what, big weekend to kick off the NASCAR season. Starting off Friday night, you had the truck race. Then Saturday, you had the Xfinity race. Yesterday, yeah, you had a several hour rain delay in there with the Daytona 500. But my goodness, was it worth it, especially to see the way the race ended. Anybody would have told me that William Byron was going to come from ninth to win the thing? No, and he was my pick. If you remember last week, he was my pick to win the race. Not only because he won last year and I thought he would win again this year, but also the simple fact that that 24 car holds a special place for me, simply as a Jeff Gordon fan. Uh, so I've kind of adopted Byron, and he did a great job of working himself through that wreck there at the very end. We'll get into the Daytona 500 here in just a little bit, but Tyler Reddick did a great job as well. But everything kicked off Friday with the Fresh from Florida 500. Fresh from Florida 500 truck race. Okay, it'll be funny over the course of the season. We will run into some really interesting names for these races. You just kind of got to go with it. Parker Klingerman came across the finish line first, but he failed inspection after the race. So he ends up losing that win. Corey Heim ends up as the winner. Giovanni Ruggiero comes in second. Ty Majeski third. Grant Enfinger fourth. Justin Haley fifth. And you're going to hear Justin Haley's name again here in just a little bit. Chandler Smith sixth. Daniel Hemrick seventh. Jason White eight. William Sawalich nine. And Frankie Muniz. Yeah, that Frankie Muniz. Malcolm in the middle comes in 10th in his first truck series race as a full-time competitor in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. So very interesting uh, race, but Klingerman did a really nice job. It's just that he didn't pass inspection and ends up being disqualified. The Xfinity race, that Xfinity race was 100% Austin Hills to win until he gets tied up with an incident and ends up coming in near the back of the pack, unfortunately. It's not a good thing for him because these are the tracks that he really excels on. So, to see a guy like Austin Hill come in at the back of the pack like he did, it doesn't help at all with in fact, let me pull up those results from Saturday. Um, it's you hate to see what happened happen, as weird as that might sound. You really hate to hear what happened um, with that Xfinity race, simply because of you got another really close finish for Sheldon Creed, and I'm getting to the point now. I like the guy simply because I want to see the poor guy win. Um, he he's he has the record in the Xfinity series of second place finishes without getting a win. Winner of the race again was Jesse Love. Sam Mayer comes in second. Sheldon Creed comes in third. Carson Quapple fourth. Taylor Gray fifth in his first Xfinity race. Harrison Burton, who came down from the Cup Series, came in sixth. Jordan Anderson seven. Dean Thompson eight. Jeremy Clements nine. Patrick Emmerling comes in 10th. Um, but yeah, Austin Hill ends up 33rd after getting caught in that wreck and had some mechanical issues, and he just wasn't able to do anything in that race. And like I say, I think that's going to hurt him throughout the course of the season because those super speedways are the tracks that he really excels in. And whenever you lose those opportunities, you do lose the opportunity, and you can't get those back. So we'll see what Hill does this week on a 1.5 mile super speedway, because Atlanta, is pretty much running here lately, just like Daytona or a Talladega. Hey, hit me up if you got any questions or anything about the race, or about anything that we're talking about. Hit me up here on Facebook or on the Driving to the Top Productions YouTube channel, or on Twitter at Go Big Go Home Pod. Definitely look forward to getting a chance to communicate with a bunch of y'all this evening, and it's gonna be a fun hour, and we'll get a chance to talk about a lot of different things, not only from this weekend, but also the simple fact of what's coming up this weekend as well, because that Atlanta race is going to be fun. Sunday, my goodness, yesterday, long day, lots of stuff happening. I mean, they call the Daytona 500 the Super Bowl of racing. And there's a reason for that. I mean, it is the biggest event in the Cup Series, has been for its entirety. And this race, you had President Trump there. Uh, he's the only president to have been to two Daytona 500s while in office. So he does hold that distinction. A number of presidents have been to the race. Um, Probably the most um, prevalent of those was Ronald Reagan. Whenever Richard Petty won his final Daytona 500, Ronald Reagan was in attendance for the race and was at Victory Lane with Richard Petty, and got a chance. Then they talked and things of that nature. And there's a bunch of famous pictures out there. Um, Regarding that. So, very, very cool to see President Trump out there. Um, he he gets out amongst them, man. Last week he was at the Super Bowl. This week he's at the Daytona 500. I mean, it's very, very, very out there. Not like the previous regime. And this is not a political show by any stretch, but you see the president out there, out and about constantly. It was a very quick first phase of the race. They drop the green and they get 10 laps in before rain hits. Okie dokie. So that's not a good thing. You end up with a red flag for the rain, and it causes a 3.5 hour rain delay. The They officially called it 3 hours and 9 minutes, but whatever you want to call it. Cars came down, pitted. They end up another 20 laps, and there was some more rain in turns 3 and 4. So 6:15 p.m. Eastern, red flag goes over. The cars are back on the track for good, and the rain is gone. Once they got the red flag situations taken care of and all that good stuff, Joey Logano was out front. Byron was second. Austin Cindric third. Chase Briscoe fourth. Ross Chastain was fifth. Kudos to Ty Dillon, who ran up front a huge chunk of the day in that 10 car, getting his chance to come back to the Cup Series after not being a part of the Cup Series last year. And big kudos to him. Ran a fantastic race. And I will be really surprised if we don't see a lot from Ty Dillon this coming season. Also, Corey LaJoie had a great race. We'll talk more about him here in just a couple minutes. Um, but you end up AJ Allmendinger, the first car to leave the race, mechanical issue. Um, they were looking at the pipes, and because there was fluid coming out of them, and it was a terminal issue, the engine was gone. So at lap 43, AJ Allmendinger is done, and first guy out of the race. So and I know a lot of uh, daily fantasy people that had AJ Allmendinger, including myself. in their lineups, and that really caused an issue. Lap 63, Denny Hamlin, Zane Smith, and Josh Berry crash. All three guys end up back out. It does end up causing the end of stage one. Joey Logano won the first stage. Keselowski was second, Blaney third, Stenhouse fourth. Christopher Bell was in fifth at the end of stage one. Also at the end of stage one, you have pit stops. Kyle Busch and Justin Allgaier got penalized for crew members over the wall too quick, so they had to do a drive-through. And then you have not the big one, but a semi-big one on lap 71. Multi-car crash involves Ross Chastain, John Hunter Nemechek, Jimmy Johnson, Martin Truex, Elio Castroneves, Chase Briscoe, Kyle Busch, Cody Ware, and Riley Herbst. A couple of the guys ended up being out of the race because of that. In particular, Elio Castroneves, who came in from IndyCar. Ross Chastain was also out, but a lot of the guys were able to do repair, get back out. Joey Logano ended up having the hood up, ends up going a lap down, and we'll talk more about what he did throughout the course of the race. Ended up going a lap down right before the restart after this yellow. Ryan Blaney and Austin Cindric, teammates for Penske, led the field to the restart. Lap 83, caution for debris. Logano's team stayed out, and he was close to going 2 laps down, but gets the free pass and gets back on the lead lap. Team makes the repairs, and when they go back to green, now he's back on the lead lap. So a really good job by his pit crew and particularly by his crew chief, getting that plan together and letting Joey Logano get back onto the lead lap. Stage 2 ends with Ryan Blaney out front, Austin Cindric second, Chase Elliott third, Alex Bowman fourth, and Todd Gilliland in fifth. The Penske cars dominated this race, a lot of the race. Whether it was Cindric, whether it was Logano, whether it was Ryan Blaney, all three of those guys very dominant throughout the race. And everybody was thinking, okay, these are going to be the cars to beat. It's just a matter of which one ends up front. And Logano and Cindric had won Daytona 500s. Ryan Blaney hasn't won one yet. He's won a championship, hasn't won the Daytona 500. You get to lap 161. There's another caution for debris. Bubba Wallace gets out to the front after that with the green flag dropping. And you've got a 7-car breakaway about 4 or 5 laps into this thing. It was really weird because most of the race, 2 wide, 3 wide, everybody's right close together, typical Daytona kind of thing. But then we get down to 14 laps to go. And that's when the fit hit the shan. This race went completely haywire from this point. It really, honest to God, did. Call it what you want. I'm going to call it that Ricky Stenhouse caused this. Some people are going to say Joey Logano caused it. I don't care which one caused it. I'm not the biggest fan of either one, but it caused a lot of cars to get knocked out that shouldn't have gotten knocked out. You ended up with Logano and Blaney and Kyle Busch and a number of guys having massive issues and getting knocked out of the race. When they restart the race at 192, Corey LaJoie is out in front. Corey LaJoie is a guy who had a full-time ride last season, doesn't this year, gets out there. He dipped into his kids' college fund to help get this car onto the track for Daytona. The man knows how to run super speedways. I'm telling you that right up front. The man knows how to do this. And LaJoy gets out in front of Cindric, and I honestly thought, I really honestly thought it was going to be Corey LaJoy's race to win. And we're into the final 8 laps. We get to lap 195, and another piece of chaos. Um, Christopher Bell's car was not handling right all day, and he drove accordingly. Cole Custer, who is again getting a second chance at life in the Cup Series after getting knocked down to the Xfinity Series last season and coming back up. There's a reason why Cole Custer wasn't in the Cup Series last year, and it's crap like what he did in the at lap 195. Over aggressive, trying to get. There's 5 laps left. That's 13 miles left in the race, and he's trying to make it. It's the last lap. Cole Custer hits Bell, drives him into the outside wall, and the caution comes out. Ryan Preece did something in the 60 car that I have never seen in a NASCAR race. He rode a wheelie halfway down a straightaway, and then ended up flipping over. Nowhere near to the degree of his crash a couple years ago. That if you saw that, it was horrific. That's why that whole section there is concrete, because it was grass. When he hit that grass, went head over tea kettle, side to side to side to side to side to side to side, and walked away from it. This one here, he hit, and when he hit, he not only flipped, then he hits the wall. Thank goodness he hit it back end first. Uh, because if he would have hit it the other way, I think he would have flipped over the fence. I really, honest to goodness, do. Um, but in the praise for the safety of drivers, look at it from this standpoint. The man dropped the net as soon as the car quit moving. He dropped the net to say he was okay. Got out of the car. 15 minutes later, they're interviewing the man outside of the infield care center. Okay. Uh, you just sit there, and it tells you two things. A, these guys are tough. B, it's tremendous. And I've made the comment a number of times, and I apologize if anybody gets upset about the comment I'm about to make. If you do, I'm sorry, and you can get over it. But there is one thing positive that came out of the death of Dale Earnhardt. Dale Earnhardt was my dad's favorite driver. I nothing but Earnhardt from my dad. Okay. And when that happened, fan of Earnhardt or not, it hits you, because Earnhardt's one of the, when you talk about the best drivers of all time in NASCAR, you're going to talk Earnhardt. You put the Mount Rushmore together, Earnhardt's going to be on it. But the way that the wreck happened, and the way they've never publicly said, but you could tell. Okay. If you haven't seen the wreck, the crazy part about what happened in that race, about 20 laps prior to Earnhardt's wreck, Tony Stewart literally went head over rear end, down the straightaway, got out of the car. Earnhardt gets tapped by Kenny Schrader and gets bumped up into the wall. He hits another car. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Sterling Marlin's car. I could be wrong. I think it was Sterling Marlin. Hit his car, and the angle with which he hit the wall, I firmly believe broke his neck. That's just me. Um, but you hate to see it happen. But there was no such thing as a safer barrier. There was no such thing as a Hans device. There was no such thing as the water barrels at the end of the pit road, that just in case you don't make it all the way in, you hit those water barrels instead of hitting the concrete wall. That's just a few of the safety. There were no flaps on the tops of on the roofs of the car to help from flipping. It didn't. They don't fully prevent it, but they sure as heck help. The safety things that have been developed over the last 25 years, all 100% all of the people that are driving now are required to follow these safety procedures. Back then, it was like the NHL when they instituted the helmets. They grandfathered it in. If you were a new driver on the circuit, you had to wear it. These old timers didn't have to. The guys that had been driving previously didn't have to. They had the choice. Earnhardt wasn't going to wear all that stuff. Again, a choice. And it was his choice. And he made it. But now it's a requirement. And the safety procedures, the safety equipment isn't just NASCAR. You see it in IndyCar, you see it in F1, you see it in all the other series that are out there. You're looking at tracks that have all sorts of safety precautions when they work on these street tracks and when they're working on road courses. And when it's not just the ovals, there's a lot of that has happened because of the death of Dale Earnhardt. Ryan Preece twice has been in accidents that if he didn't have those safety equipment and following the safety procedures after the wrecks, I don't think that he would have, walked away from both of those. I don't think he would have spent 15 minutes at the infield care center and been getting interviewed after that. I think he'd have gotten hurt real bad. So very thankful for that. But there's still time left in the race. You end up going to overtime and you have another wreck. Um, almost the entire field wipes out on the last lap. They're on the back stretch, and the only cars that they show were not a part of the wreck. There were only 5. Byron, Tyler Reddick, Jimmy Johnson, Chase Briscoe. 4. I apologize. Those were the only cars not involved in that last wreck. 4 cars. Craziness. And if you watched the race, I don't know how William Byron and Tyler Reddick got through threading the needle without hitting anything. I really don't. The wreck happened up front. The guys getting aggressive. It was a racing thing. And but it ended up just absolutely crazy to finish the race. Your top 10, William Byron is your winner, back-to-back Daytona 500 champion. Tyler Reddick in second in the Toyota. Jimmy Johnson, 7-time former Hendrick Motorsports driver in the 84 car, owner of the Legacy Motor Club, comes in third. Phenomenal day for him. Chase Briscoe in his new number 19, taking the spot of Martin Truex Jr. for Joe Gibbs, comes in fourth. John Hunter Nemechek, teammate of Jimmy Johnson at Legacy Motor Club, comes in fifth in his second year. Alex Bowman from Hendrick Motorsports is sixth. Ryan Blaney and Austin Cindric, both Penske drivers, seventh and eighth. Justin Allgaier driving for JR Motorsports. That would be Dale Earnhardt Jr. Motorsports. Comes in ninth. and Chris Buescher running for RFK Racing comes in 10th. Chris Buescher, a Texas guy, Dallas Fort Worth guy. So yeah, he's a not your typical southeastern indie kind of guy, whatever you want to call it. So you have all that, and then when you look at the whole, you have some big names in the back because of Rex or whatever. Um, we talked about AJ and we talked about Elio Castroneves. Joey Logano officially 35th, Kyle Busch 34th, Christopher Bell 31st. Bubba Wallace, one of the favorites, ends up 29th. Denny Hamlin, three-time winner at Daytona, 24th. Corey LaJoie, after all the really good stuff that he did in that race, ends up 21st or 22nd, excuse me. Kyle Larson, who he just cannot get out of his own way at Daytona. For whatever reason, he can't. Finishes 20th. Chase Elliott, 15th. And then Michael McDowell, also a Daytona 500 champion, came in 11th. So a really, really fun race. Could have done without the rain delay, of course, but really fun race. And I look forward to this coming weekend because now you're going to go super speedway racing on a 1.5-mile track instead of on a 2.5-mile track. Which that's the Atlanta Motor Speedway, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Last year's defending champ. It's the Am Better Health 400, by the way, coming up on Sunday. But the race it's going to be very similar to what we saw last year. It's going to be tough to repeat because it was the closest 3-car finish in the history of NASCAR. You had Daniel Suarez, you had Ryan Blaney, and you had, as I'm completely going blank. But anyway, Suarez ends up getting the win by 0.003 seconds. Think about that for a minute. 3/1000ths of a second. In essence, the speed of a sneeze. That's pretty stout, right? So when you look at what's going to go on this weekend in Atlanta, it's going to be a blast. The Craftsman Truck Series will race on Saturday afternoon. The Xfinity Series will race immediately thereafter. And then the Sunday race will be at 3:00 Eastern on Sunday. Going to be, I think, a really fun race. Atlanta always is. The first part of the schedule this season, to me, is really going to be interesting because they've changed things around a little bit. So you've got Daytona, then you go to Atlanta, and then they come to Austin, Texas, for the Circuit of the Americas. So you have a road course 3 weeks in, which I think will be fun. Then they go to Phoenix, and then Las Vegas, and then Miami Homestead, followed by Martinsville. And that's how you kind of round out March. That's your first 7 races. But there's a lot to be said about these races. You go 2.5-mile super speedway, 1.5-mile super speedway, road course, 1-mile track at Phoenix that really, I think the flatness of the track makes that race even more exciting because it runs like a 3/4 mile or a half mile. Then you go Pennzoil 400 in Vegas, which is a 1.5 miles in Miami. And then you go to Martinsville, which is a half mile. So those first 7 races, it's gonna be a good time. Um, to see what all happens with these teams, um, and all 3 levels. I'm really anxious to see what's gonna happen with all this. Again, if you've got any questions or comments or anything, hit me up on Twitter at Go Big Go Home Pod. Hit us up right here on our Driving to the Top Productions YouTube page. Um, the short circuit of Coda, I think, and Josh, I appreciate the question. The short circuit of full disclosure, I live in Waco, Texas, which is about an hour and 20 minutes from Coda. Been to Coda a couple different times. The Using the short circuit instead of the long circuit like they have, um, I think was for a couple of reasons. One was for the fan experience because when you run the long course, there's a lot of areas where there's not a lot of ability for fans to see what's going on. So in essence, they're watching it on TV. Well, you can sit at home and watch it on TV. Um, the other part of it though is I think that they wanted to try and add to the excitement and making it a little bit shorter. Coda to me, I would rather watch a race at Coda than at Watkins Glen or in California at Sonoma. Um, I like watching the good part of it is, pardon me. The good part of what NASCAR on road courses is right now, if you go back 25, 30 years ago, you knew when you went to a road course, there was maybe half a dozen guys that could win the race. Unless something just pardon me. Unless something just crazy happened, you only had 5 or 6 guys. You had Jeff Gordon, you had Rusty Wallace, you had Kenny Schrader, you had Boris Said, um, you had just a few guys. Earnhardt got good at it, but he wasn't really that great at it. Um, you know, there just weren't that many guys. Now, yes, you have those guys that are, shall we say, specialists at this, starting off with Van Ginsberg. SVG is obviously going to be the favorite in any road course race. But you've got super strong guys in Byron, in Elliott. Christopher Bell is very good on the short tracks or on the road courses, I mean. You've got a lot of guys that are super good, when you walk into it, and that's what I was saying. When you walk into it, SVG is probably your favorite. Whether it's the Chicago road street course, the Coda or Sonoma or Watkins Glen, whatever you're going to run. If it's a road course, SVG is probably your favorite right out of the box. But you look when you have Blaney and Byron and Reddick and Elliott and Suarez and Michael McDowell. That's just a few of them that are really good on these road. Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson can drive on anything. You could create some sort of figure eight loop de loop that looks like runs like a roller coaster, and Kyle Larson would run it, plain and simple, and do well with it. So when you're thinking about that Coda race in 2 weeks, it's going to be interesting because there's a bunch of guys that could do really well in this thing and maybe even win it. Um, am I restarting the Larson versus Max debate? Here's what I can tell you. I think Kyle Larson, and I've heard other people say this, including Lewis Hamilton. that has said that Kyle Larson is the best all-around driver in the world right now. So the question was thrown out there if I'm restarting the Larson versus Max Verstappen debate. At this particular point in time, and I'm saying on February 17th at 6:35 Central Time, those guys are Michael versus Prince. You know, um, well, that's and Josh said, well, what about the 4 world championships? Okay. You have to look at competition level. You have to look at length of time in the sport. Because if I remember correctly, and double checking myself right now. Yeah, Verstappen is 27. And yes, he has won, 4 world championships and he, okay, but who I throw this out there with all the respect there is, okay? How many top tier drivers are there in F1? Not named Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton. There aren't many. Maybe another 1 or 2, maybe. It's those 2 guys and everybody else. In NASCAR Cup Series, you've got 20 guys that could all win the championship this year. 20 guys. So when you look at it from that standpoint, you're looking at 2, 3, maybe 4 at the most premier guys in F1. And I'm not knocking F1. Trust me, I'm not knocking any form of racing. I'm not knocking F1. But 4 world championships in F1, if he came to NASCAR, I honestly think he'd be a middle of the pack guy. I really do. Could he do well? Sure. Would he be elite? I don't think so. But Kyle Larson has proven that he can be elite in any car that he gets into, whether it's a sprint car, whether it's dirt, whether it's a cup car, whether it's an Indy car. The man led the Indy 500 last year. I know, no way. Josh is bringing up Max would be like SVG. No, no way, no way, because of one main thing. And this is where the problem comes in for F1 guys and for IndyCar guys coming to NASCAR. Comparing it to the sports car that SVG was driving previously, okay? You can't make contact in those F1 and Indy cars. The open wheel does not allow you to have that contact, drafting, bumping. I know I'm half Polish. I talk with my hands. But you have no ability to make contact. You have no ability to do a bump and run, or you're going to rip the front end off of the car. You're going to run that front nose right up into the crowd. You can't do that. And that's what happens in NASCAR every week. When you're in those stock cars, and you are doing like they were doing yesterday, those rear ends and those noses on every single one of those cars yesterday at Daytona were completely mashed from the bump drafting and things of that nature. You can't. That's where the biggest problem comes in. When a Juan Pablo Montoya came to NASCAR, it didn't work as well. SVG and what he was running before They had the ability to get physical. That's the biggest thing that I see as an issue in someone from Formula One and someone from a stock car, um, lineage. It's easier to go from stock car to open wheel than it is to go from open wheel to stock car. Firmly believe that. Firmly believe that. Again, Twitter is Go Big Go Home Pod. Hit me up there if you got any questions or any comments or anything about what we've been talking about this evening. Um, Also, we are into a lot of different things with regards to next week in the Cup Series. And we've got all three series actually racing next week. Trucks and Xfinity both on Saturday. Kind of interesting doing that. And then Sunday will be the Cup guys. Um, but, we're talking, the Max Verstappen versus Kyle Larson. The other thing you got to look at too, I have no doubt in my mind. Could Max Verstappen drive a stock car? Sure. Would he have and this is something you got to watch with SVG too. SVG has done great on the road courses. What's he done on the ovals? Hasn't he has struggled a lot on the ovals. And this is a guy coming from a more linear transition from sport car to this to stock car than going from open wheel to stock car. Could Max probably be right up there and do tremendously well on the road courses? Yeah. But I think it would take an awful lot of an adaptation for him or Lewis Hamilton, who, and I've heard of both of those guys talking about they would love at some point to be to run a race in Cup. They're going to have to learn an awful lot to be able to do that. Now, if they came in and did a road course, they would probably it would be a case, SVG, Daniel Suarez, guys like that, and I'm sure Verstappen or Hamilton would give them tremendous competition. But to say that, I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly how well they would do. But all that being said, it would be fun to see. It really would. I like. They used to run and I know I'm really dating myself now. They used to run a series, and I'm sure you can check it out on YouTube. And they thought about bringing it back, and they've never actually brought it back. But they used to run a thing called the International Race of Champions, or IROC. Okay, and they all ran IROC Chevys. They were the Chevy IROC Super Sport that you could buy off the dealer's floor, and they ran them at different tracks. They ran some road courses. It was kind of an all-star race, okay? But they brought NASCAR, they brought World of Sport, they brought World of Outlaws, they brought IndyCar, they brought F1, they brought I mean, they would run, I think it was 20. It was either 16 or 20. I don't remember exactly which. But they would run those cars, and it was, the exact same car for everybody, and run those races. And you would see all kinds of different results. I mean, I know Mario Andretti um, won a couple of races in the IROC series. Um, but in fact, let's see, 1973. Oh, I didn't realize it went that long until 2006. And it was wild. They had some great races. Um, Al Unser ran some of these races. Mario Andretti ran them. AJ Foyt. Um, but then you also had guys like Marcos Ambrose. Um, and then you had Dale Earnhardt and Darrell Waltrip and Mark Martin and guys like that from the NASCAR series as well. But it was one of those things that was created um, to do exactly what we were just talking about. Um, Sam Hornish Jr., IndyCar champion, did really well in this particular thing. Um, I'm trying to find the F1 guys that ran through this. Grand American Road Racing drivers were part of it. You had and I even forgot about this. There were even Supercross motorcycle riders that were in this thing. Um, Drag racing. John Force ran the International Race of Champions races on a few different occasions. So did Kenny Bernstein. Those were always fun. They really, really were. And when you look at the list of champions of this thing, yeah, for the most part, it was NASCAR guys. But 1988, Al Unser Jr. won it. He won it twice, actually, in 86 and 88. Mario Andretti won it in 79, Al Unser in 78, Bobby Unser in 75, AJ Foyt won it in 76 and 77. Um, but yeah, I would love to see something like that. And Josh, I know something like that where, you could have Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen and guys like that running with, um, you know, Takia Sato and I'll think of his name in a sec, Hinchcliffe, and guys like that from IndyCar, and then turn around and be racing against the Kyle Larsons and the Chase Elliots, and just all these different things. It would be super cool to be able to do that again. Um, so okay, and then tomorrow the F1 teams will all be unveiling their liveries. Is it liveries or liveries? But those come down tomorrow. All the paint schemes and designs and all that kind of good jazz. So that's pretty cool. And that would be neat for NASCAR to do. Yeah. The only problem is about half of the cars in NASCAR have the same paint scheme from one year to the next. Um, so there's really nothing new. But they don't really get, they'd rather just drive than, do stuff like that. But that is pretty cool. Um, but man, it's hard to believe we've almost wiped out the hour today. Uh, Got to get into the picks. Of course, I'm 1-0. If you want your picks, sure to be right, man. I'm your guy. One of these days I'll find the plaque. I should have brought it out whenever I had Brad on a couple of weeks ago. Texas Motor Speedway pick champion. This guy. But when you're looking at Atlanta, and when you look at Atlanta Motor Speedway and who really does well there, um, it's kind of a who's who. Um, and I definitely there's a couple of different guys that I'm really looking forward to picking. Okay, now you got to understand they run a couple of races a year over there. Joey Logano is always strong. Chase Elliott's always strong. Of course, that's Chase Elliott's home track. Um, William Byron is always strong over there. Um, and I wouldn't be surprised if Logano won it. Um, Suarez coming off of last year, man, that momentum from last year. But I'm gonna go out on a limb a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit, and I'm gonna take Ryan Blaney to win on Sunday. I really think that that he will be right up in there, and I think that he's got a very good chance of winning this thing. He ran super, super well along with his teammates the other day or yesterday. And yeah, I really like Ryan Blaney. Could Byron go back to back? Sure. Could Logano win it? Sure. Could Elliott win it? Yeah. I mean, like I say, that's his home track. Um, so you got to kind of take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, but he has won at Atlanta. So you can't necessarily uh, push him off either. But I'm gonna pick Ryan Blaney to win this thing. Dark horse. Oh yeah, dark horse. Go ahead and give me Byron. He won in 23 and in 22. Won the spring race in 22. Um, so let's go with that. In the Xfinity is so tough to pick. Um, man, I tell you what, Jesse Love really impressed me um, on Saturday. But the other part with this, I think, man, I got to go Austin Hill. I mean, yeah, unless it's extremely tough to not take him. He's won 3 of the last 4 races at Atlanta. Um, dark horse or secondary guy would be Justin Allgaier. But yeah, I'm gonna take Austin Hill to win the Xfinity race on Saturday afternoon, and then on Saturday afternoon early, it's going to be the trucks. Um, and boy, you talk about something that's wide open is that truck series. But you know what? I'm going to go Raja Karuth to win the race. Give me Corey Heim as my number 2. But yeah, yeah. I think Raja Karuth has done well at Atlanta. Corey Heim is one of those guys that before long he's going to be driving on Sundays. Um, so I'm taking Caruth, but would not be surprised if Corey Heim goes back to back races as well. Josh, I know you're Christopher Bell. Um, Christopher Bell to me is he's probably one of the most uninteresting drivers out there. He really is. There is for me, there's absolutely no reason to even consider supporting the guy. He doesn't really do much in terms of showing that he's boss, like a lot of these guys do. Um, could he win the race? Yeah. I mean, he's got a Gibbs car under him, which is always a good thing. And then you turn around and you look at Atlanta being wide open like Daytona. Bell could win it, sure, he definitely could. But yeah, I definitely look forward to this weekend. We got past the Daytona 500. and William Byron, our winner, on Sunday. Um, and he's going to be one to deal with this year. I picked him to win the race. I picked him to win the championship last week on the show. So we'll go from there. But there's your picks. Garrett, sure to be right. They're sure to be right. No question about it. Definitely appreciate everybody being a part of the broadcast tonight. Josh, I appreciate you hanging out on the sidetrack there. And definitely appreciate everybody watching, everybody listening. Please tell your friends about the show. It is Two Tire Change every Monday night, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central, right here on Driving to the Top Productions YouTube page. Or you can check it out on my Twitter page at Go Big Go Home Pod, or on my Facebook. It's just my name, Rich Richardson. You can check it all out right there every Monday, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central. And look forward to getting a chance to talk about Atlanta next week. And we'll preview COTA, which is a completely different style of race, which makes it even more fun. So for everybody that's been a part of the broadcast, and again, I very much appreciate everybody listening, everybody checking out, everybody commenting. Josh, I appreciate you very much. My name is Big Rich. Until next Monday night, so long, everybody.